Now, there is only one instance within the book of Judges where we have such a leader who is a woman, but it's quite an interesting and significant story, partly for its unusual nature, and I want us to take a look at this story briefly and see if we can draw some conclusions from it. It begins in Judges chapter 4. If you're looking in the NRSV, it's page 305, and the name of the leader that I'm talking about is Deborah. And one of the reasons that this story is particularly significant is because there are three very strong and important leaders within this story that are all women. So let's just take a look, and I'll just make a few comments, and we'll probably spend more time in class unpacking this. First of all, chapter 4, I'll begin with verse 4. At that time, and the time referred to is a time of national military crisis when one of the Canaanite groups is making significant inroads into Israelite territory. At that time, Deborah, a prophetess, wife of Lapidot, was judging Israel. And that's using the verbal form of that, Shofet. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. That's in northern Israel. And the Israelites came up to her for judgment. Now notice a few things right away. First, and this is just so common as almost not worthy of note, is that virtually every woman in the Bible, when they are introduced in terms of their relationship to a man. So she's called, first of all, the wife of Lapidot. And then we never hear from this guy ever again. He's not even a minor character in the story, but they feel that they have to mention a man in relationship to every woman, either daughter of someone or wife of somebody. And that's the last he's ever mentioned. That's the last her marital status is ever mentioned. Then she's called a prophetess. The ESS is the English equivalent of the female ending to the Hebrew word prophet. This is quite unusual. There are very few figures within the Hebrew Bible, women who are designated as prophets. There are some, but that's something we need to note. And then third, she is described as judging Israel. Now here, in spite of what I had just told you, judging appears to be a reference to deciding legal cases. Reading on, verse 6, she sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kedesh and Naphtali, and said to him, notice two things. She is sending and summoning a man. Secondly, she is summoning a man from a different tribe than hers. She's from the tribe of Ephraim. She's summoning Barak, who's from the tribe of Naphtali. So this is a pan-tribal authority that Deborah has with no structural basis for it. It's simply on the basis of the weight, the force of Deborah's personality herself. She summons a man from another tribe. She goes on and gives him certain military directions. This is Barak's response. Verse 8, if you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. So Barak doesn't have the determination or the courage, it seems to me, to go into battle to do what Deborah the prophet says, unless Deborah the Shofet, Deborah the charismatic leader, accompanies him. She is convinced somehow, or he is convinced somehow, that his victory is tied in with the presence of this figure, this divine representative. And this is what Deborah says. I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory. For Yahweh will sell Sisera, that's the enemy commander, Yahweh will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. So the promise she makes is that in this unique situation where Barak refuses to go into battle unless accompanied by a woman, that a woman shall receive the glory. And then we're introduced to the second woman in the story. Her name, in English, Jael, wife, once again, always introduced in terms of a man, who is again never mentioned afterwards, the wife of Heber the Kenite. And she's introduced, verse 11. Now Heber the Kenite had separated from the other Kenites. Kenite is a non-Israelite tribe. That is, descendants of Hobab, father-in-law of Moses, and so on. Verse 12, when Sisera was told that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone into the Mount Tabor, he calls out his chariots. There's a battle. Sisera loses and flees from the battle. Verse 17, now Sisera had fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite. Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Have no fear. Now we've had Deborah, the leader, the Shofet, and now we have Jael, who is functioning largely as a trickster here, but also something in a category I have not introduced before, which is woman warrior. Watch what she does. Compare this to some of the other women that we've studied this semester. She calls him into her tent. He's running for his life from the Israelite soldiers. Turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Have no fear. So he turned aside to her in the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And then he said, please give me a little water to drink. I'm so thirsty. She opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. Now, look at all the imagery here. All of the female, the feminine imagery. She invites him into her tent in a place of security. She covers him up with a blanket. She feeds him. He asks for water, but she feeds him milk. She nurtures him. We have here all of the images of maternal, of motherhood going on here. Reading on. So he says, watch at the entrance of the tent while I go to sleep. And then when he falls asleep, verse 21, Jael, wife of Heber, took a tent peg, took a hammer in her hand, went softly to him, and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground. He was lying fast asleep from weariness, and he died. So here we have a woman going up to an enemy of Israel that has taken on her protection, and she drives a tent peg through his skull, nailing him to the ground. We're fortunate to have another account of this story, and that's in the very next chapter, chapter 5. The details are slightly different. Instead of Sisera being on the ground sleeping, he's still standing up. But listen to, first of all, the poetry of the story, and second of all, the rather unique portrayal of femininity and womanhood, because the image in chapter 4 was maternal. The image in chapter 5 is very sexual. This is chapter 5, verse 24. Most blessed of women be Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite. Of tent-dwelling women, most blessed. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. She brought him curds in a lordly bowl. She put her hand to the tent peg, her right hand to the workman's mallet. She struck Sisera a blow. She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. He sank. He fell. He lay still at her feet. And another translation of that is, he lay still between her legs. At her feet he sank. He fell. Where he sank, there he fell, dead. So we have an incredible story here of a woman who inflicts gruesome and aggressive violence on a man, the enemy of Israel. We have one more woman to cover in this story. And this is a negative portrayal. This is an instance of women mistreating women. And this is the account of Sisera's mother. Now, Sisera is laying in a bloody heap on the ground, but Sisera's mother doesn't know that. And Sisera's mother is waiting back in the Canaanite camp for her son and his armies to return with spoil. And this is what it says, continuing in the poem, verse 28. Out of the window she peered, the mother of Sisera gazed, through the lattice. Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the hoofbeats of his chariots? Her wisest ladies make answer. Indeed, she answers the question herself. Are they not finding and dividing the spoil, a girl or two for every man? You hear that? A girl or two for every man. She's stating with approval the military practice of capturing and raping the young women of the defeated land. Not only that, but the word that's translated here, girl, is the most profane and offensive reference not to the woman, but rather to the sexual organs of the woman. So you can just use your imagination to find an English equivalent of a very abusive and offensive way of referring to woman, and it's put in the mouth of another woman. A girl or two for every man, spoil of dyed stuffs for Sisera, spoil of dyed stuffs embroidered, 2 pieces of dyed work embroidered for my neck as spoil. And the story ends there. You never find out what the mother of Sisera's reaction is when she hears what happens to her son. So this account is an account of 3 powerful women. Deborah, prophetess, Shofet, who summons men, military commanders, to do her bidding. We have Jael, woman warrior, able to physically overcome a male enemy through violence. And finally, we have the mother of Sisera, who speaks with approval to the abuse of women in another nation. What do we learn here? We learn a whole range of women who don't fit in the model of the humble, the quiet, the one who defers, the one who stays home while the man does all the work.